What is up, guys? Man, it was a crazy day yesterday. And listen, we got a busy week on the show. So I wanted to go ahead and drop this on Sunday. So it kind of had its own day, man. Get y'all a little bit of weekend content right here on the Blue Blood. So if you're new, smash the subscribe button, hit the like button, man. The support these past few weeks has been uh just amazing, man. Shout out to y'all, man. I appreciate y'all really and truly. But we got to talk about yesterday, man. South Carolina State pulls off the huge upset over Jackson State 31 to 10 in the Celebration Bowl over there in Atlanta, man. And listen, one stadium's beautiful, man. So if you went, I hope you had a great time. I've been to multiple games in that stadium, and it's one of my favorite environments to go to. I also love Atlanta. So man, I hope y'all had a blast, man. Safe travels if you're traveling back home now. But we're gonna talk about takeaways, what went wrong for Jackson State, and then have the debate about who should be the HBCU National Champion, because there's been a lot of debate on social media about it. I'm gonna give you my take, and then of course we'll do a quick look ahead. What is next for both of these teams as we enter an all season that is primed to be one of the more exciting ones that we've had in a long time. But we got to go to takeaways first, and I'm going to start with South Carolina State first. I want to give them their props before we kind of get into anything else. Shaq Davis. Oh my lord, man, this kid deserves everybody's respect. This kid is a legit NFL, a future NFL player. He showed it on the biggest stage, and his physicality, his size, his speed, his athleticism really popped off the screen yesterday. If you didn't know who this kid was coming into yesterday, well, you know now. And 5 catches, 95 receiving yards, 19 yards per catch, 3 receiving touchdowns. And the best part about it was he did it in a multitude of ways. He can be the deep threat. He can win the one-on-one matchups. His route running's on point, and he did it against multiple Jackson State defensive backs. He did it against Nugget, went behind Shallow. He did it against Hall. I mean, he did it against a multitude of Jackson State defenders, and he really showed his versatility, his explosiveness, and what he could offer to a program moving forward. This kid's name has to be called in one of the upcoming NFL drafts. I don't know. I don't believe he's leaving this year. I know CFL's kind of, the South Carolina State guy, so you'll have to ask him. But whenever he declares, this kid has real talent, but I believe he has one more year in the program, and that is going to make this offense extremely, extremely scary. Now, Corey Fields was not efficient. Let me just say that. Was not efficient. Only completed 39% of his passes, but on the preview, I said that the efficiency wasn't really the key. Him being a playmaker was. Could he make those handful of throws to win the game? The answer was a resounding yes at the end of yesterday. 166 passing, 4 passing touchdowns, and 1 pick. He made multiple throws to win this game, and he was the playmaker when he needed to be. Because listen, he really struggled in the first half, guys. And I know Jackson State fans saw it. I know South Carolina State fans saw it. Fields wasn't really in his zone. And so what I really saw was he was trying to play outside of himself. You're in the Celebration Bowl. You're against, Coach Prime and Jackson State. You got Shador, the freshman of the year on the other side, the Jerry Rice Award winner. I got to play above and beyond, what I used to playing. No, all we needed was Corey Fields to play the best Corey Fields game he could. I don't need you to be Shador. I don't need you to be anybody else other than what Corey Fields brings to the table. And in the second half, late in the first half, that's what you saw, in my opinion, is you saw his confidence go up a little bit, his pocket presence go up a little bit, and it's almost like Coach Buddy Pugh just said, take a deep breath. Just take a deep breath at halftime, come back out, and we're gonna go do this big. And on top of that, they did a great job in the second half of protecting him. The defense did a great job of putting them in good field position by forcing turnovers. And ultimately, Corey Fields, even though 30 something percent completion percentage isn't great, he made the throws he needed to win, including that beautiful bomb over the top of Shallow and everything where he didn't play it well. That throw was on the money. Great job right there by Corey Fields in this offense. But Shaq Davis and Corey Fields had outstanding days ultimately. And then also, great adjustment by the offensive coordinator. He was chipping Houston every play, triple teaming him if he needed to, but using their oversized H back. That kid was like 250 of pure muscle. It could knock your head off. And every time they needed some sort of extra protection, he was able to come in, chip, straight up take on a blitz, or if he would chip, he'd get out there and he also be out there running routes and things like that, being an option for Fields to dumb down to. So great adjustment by the offensive coordinator to bring in that extra blocker. He knows. He said, listen, the secondary has shown some weaknesses at times. If we can block up their front, we can make some plays. And in the second half, I think you really saw them make that adjustment and find a way to block up that front seven for Jackson State. And ultimately, that was one of the huge keys to win the game, is they had to protect Fields, and they did a very nice job of it in the second half. Now, the other side, man, and my other takeaway, and I want people to kind of let me explain it before everyone's like, "Whoa, what did he just say?" Because in my opinion, my big takeaway of this game is I think this might have been exactly what Jackson State needed. And when I say that, it's because games like this, to me, as an analyst, as a guy who has followed the game for a long time, these games are important for a program's overall development. Because without games like this, you can just sweep the problems under the carpet, under the rug, put it in the closet, and you can ignore them because you could just say, "quote unquote," we still won. And I heard that all year, because even when Jack State was winning, I was like, man, this offensive line, this run game, and everyone was like, well, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, Blue. We're still winning. Yeah, that's all good, but it's eventually going to catch up to you. And I think that's what we saw this weekend. So I thought this game was needed because now the coaching staff, Jackson State fans, all the other analysts and YouTube channels can say, okay, well, these problems are tangible and these problems matter in the long run. And we can't just sweep them on the rug anymore. We got to pull up the rug and say, all right, what are we going to do with this? Where are we going to take it? How are we going to fix it? Let's move on. And so I think this really put a lot of things into perspective for Jackson State, and it's a great time to have the loss. I know everyone wants to win the Celebration Bowl. Still 11-2, still SWAC champions. It's still a great season, but it allows you to go in the offseason and say and have a checklist of like, okay, we got to fix this, we got to fix that. This can't happen next year. And I think it was a great measuring stick of where overall the program was in terms of a national like a national rank or something like this. Because yes, they were 6-5 and now 7-5. They were 5-0 in the MEAC though. And they had a loss to Clemson, they had a loss to North Carolina A&T, they lost to FAMU, Alabama A&M. I get all that, but matchups make fights in college, or matchups matter the most in college football. So I think ultimately the loss isn't like necessarily a good thing, but I do think it's going to benefit Jackson State more so than winning everything and going 12-1. Everyone being like, man, screw all those problems. We've just won everything anyway. I think this was an ultimately good thing for Jackson State to take a step forward as a program. And I said the same thing about FAMU against Southeastern. Ultimately, it's a measuring stick of where your program needs to improve upon going into next year. So I think I really do. That was my biggest takeaway from Jackson State, is that this was a great wake up call in terms of this program. Now, what went wrong for Jackson State? Listen, and I got three issues here, and they all really tie together. And so I'll start with the main concern. And this is something, listen, if you've been a subscriber of me since, back in the spring or, early in the season, do you guys like I've been on this offensive line train before almost anybody has. This offensive line is an issue. This is a huge this is ultimately costing your team like multiple opportunities to improve. I mean, this is the main issue because it leads to the next two issues. And I think Coach Prime, and he said in the press conference, the O line has to change. And I've said it multiple times, and I hate doing this, but it's a real football critique. The O line coach has to go. The O line coach does not deserve to have a job. I'm sorry, and he doesn't. And I know some people aren't going to like it. The O line coach has to go. If you don't make a change there, nothing's going to change. You can bring in all the 5 stars, all the 4-star linemen you want. If the O line coach doesn't change, I don't think it's going to get as take a huge step forward like a lot of people think. And I like some of the recruits Jack State brought in on the O line. The O line coach has to go. There was nothing there in terms of improvement, in terms of changes, anything that justifies him being on this staff next year as the O line coach. This group regressed throughout the season, especially these past 2 weeks, because Jason Dumas dominated that front. South Carolina State had multiple early in the game. South Carolina State only was rushing 3, and it was allowing Shador a lot of time. Once they brought 4, they had no answer for South Carolina State's front four. So that has to change. 3 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, over 13 QB pressures allowed this weekend. That's unacceptable. And I think ultimately you got to make an O-line change. And since this was a bowl game, I did get some advanced analytics stats on this game. It's behind a paywall, but if you message me on Instagram and you want to pay for it, then like I'll drop the link for you guys. But no offensive lineman graded above a 63.5 PFF blocking grade yesterday. All the offensive linemen graded below a 60 in run blocking, and that just shows how big of a problem this is for Jackson State. They had no production in the front five for Jackson State, and it's going to be an issue. I think you got to replace everybody outside of maybe Tony Gray, maybe, but everyone else probably has to be replaced, in my opinion. Now, the other issue, which stems from the O line issue, being one dimensional is not going to work. And Jackson State's been athletic enough in the wide receiver spot, good enough on defense. Shador's been good enough through most of the season to overcome it. But that's something that really limited this offense as a whole this weekend and killed their play calling because if you're one dimensional, it cuts out like 3/4 of the playbook because you can't run play action, you can't run the football. So now you're just spreading it out and hoping Shador can just throw against 7-8 in coverage. It's just not going to work. The game plan for South Carolina State was we're going to play like a Tampa 2 coverage most of the game. We're not letting anything deep, and you're going to have to beat us. It was almost like the same game plan that the Buccaneers did to the Chiefs. They're like, you're not throwing it deep on us. Go ahead and dink and duck us apart. You're not throwing deep on us. And it worked because they couldn't run the football. 29 carries, 19 rushing yards, less than 1 yard per carry, and had one explosive run of 10 or more yards all game long. And that was still won by, I believe, Santi Marshall. Yes, the offensive line is part of the problem, but I think Jackson State needs that game changer running back because the running backs were too inconsistent. Yes, Pickett had his moment. J.D. Martin had his moment. Santi Marshall had his moment, but nobody was a consistent running back week in and week out, and that's going to be something Jackson State has to fix moving forward. And then finally, I'm not going to go with too hard, but we have to talk about it. Shador Sanders had another freshman moment. And I want to spin it, though. I'm not trying to rip him or anything, but this is going to be a learning experience, really and truly. He's still a freshman. It was a big moment, but he knows he has to play better in these moments. 44% completion percentage, 175, less than 5 yards per attempt, one touchdown, two interceptions. And the lack of run game has absolutely hurt Shador these past 2 weeks. It takes away the play action, like I said. Only 3 plays that Jackson State ran this weekend came off of the play action. And the play action is so key for a struggling offensive line. But since Jackson State can't run the ball, you can't run play action because the defense isn't going to respect it. So that's what I was saying, that this offensive line issue stems to a lot of other issues Jackson State had yesterday. And I think really and truly, this was the first game that pressure actually got Shador a bit sped up in his game. Usually he's very calm in the pocket, takes his time, but this weekend he got a little bit of happy feet, made a lot of throws off his back foot, wasn't necessarily accurate because I think that pressure really, really got to him this weekend. And it's all on it. You got to do something different on the offensive line. Under pressure for Shador Sanders this weekend, 1 for 8, 11 yards, less than 1.5 yards per attempt, one pick, 3 throwaways, 3 sacks, and a 39.5 passing grade. That's what happens when you just allowing instant pressure. So that cannot happen if you're Jackson State moving forward. And listen, this is going to be a learning moment. Sanders has continually taken that next step forward. He won the Jerry Rice Award. He's going to be fine. It's just that this weekend wasn't his best performance. And so because he's that focal point of this Jackson State offense, he has to be viewed a bit differently than some of the other freshmen who aren't focal points of the offense. He didn't have a run game, so that puts so much more pressure on Shador Sanders. He will be fine, but this weekend wasn't his best performance. But you got to give a shout out to the defensive game plan of South Carolina State. They did their film study. They've ran a great defensive scheme, and they executed on a high level. So I think a lot of praise has to go to South Carolina State this weekend. They deserve to win this game, and they played an outstanding game this Saturday. Now, really and truly, one of the last topics we have to talk about is who should be the HBCU National Champion. Now, there's been a lot of talk on social media that FAMU claimed a national championship today. Jackson State has a claim to it. South Carolina State has a claim to it. And let's not forget, what about Bowie State? D2 team just, listen, they have a claim too. They made a strong run in the D2 playoffs, and they're also, I believe they were number 2 in the box row coaches poll as well. Now the box row coaches poll drops on Monday along with the media poll, and those usually also determine who wins the national championship. So I was reading through some scenarios. You can have co-champions where the Celebration Bowl winner and the polls don't agree, so you'll have co-national champions. It could be that South Carolina State jumps way up because the problem is South Carolina State was ranked like 7th and 10th in the polls, and that's a huge jump to make due to them having a 6-5 record. So what you could have happen is FAMU can win a poll, South Carolina State could be the Celebration Bowl champ, and they'd be co-national champions. Now, for me, I think you have to give it to South Carolina State. The reason the Celebration Bowl was created was to have the SWAC versus the MEAC and determine who was the Black College National Champion or HBCU National Championship champion, whatever you want to call it. South Carolina State won that game convincingly. And I understand that FAMU had a better record. They made a playoff run, things like that. But if that's what this game was made to be, you have to respect that, in my opinion. And I think you have to give the national championship to South Carolina State because yes, they're 7-5, and that's maybe not impressive as a 11-2 for Jackson State, a 9-3 for FAMU, and I don't remember what Bowie's record was, but they won this game convincingly, and they've also went undefeated in the MEAC. And I believe their only HBCU loss came to North Carolina A&T by 10, and who's now in the Big South. So I don't see the argument for any of these other teams. I mean, because Jackson State beat FAMU, so that excludes the argument that FAMU beat South Carolina State. And so it's going to get real tricky here. But for me, I think we should move forward saying that South Carolina State is the HBCU national champion. It's always been who wins the Celebration Bowl outside of Alabama A&M not being able to play in it, but the MEAC set out, so Alabama A&M claimed that spring title. But you have to say South Carolina State is the 2021 HBCU national champion, in my opinion. I don't think FAMU would want to claim it. And I don't think Jackson State definitely wants to claim it after yesterday. I mean, Bowie State might claim one, but that's at the D2 level. And I feel like there should be some sort of distinction there because D1 versus D2 is kind of a weird comparison. But that's my opinion. But comment below what your thoughts are on that. And I'm interested to see what comes of it tomorrow. I believe the poll drops at like 11 a.m. on Monday Central Time, so like 12 p.m. Eastern. But as soon as that comes out, man, I'll post an update somewhere on social media about what came of that poll. But the last thing, man, briefly, what's next for these two programs? Our guy CFL says South Carolina State is a lot to get back to the Celebration Bowl next year. They have a lot of talent coming back, and Buddy Pugh has been coaching his what offense. So I wouldn't put it past them. The next thing to really do is continue to improve upon that defense, man. I mean, because I'm pretty sure Jacoby Durant's going to take his talents to the NFL. They got to they got to replace him in the secondary. That secondary played absolutely amazing this weekend. And on top of that, you just got to continually get better, man, because there's no way the MEAC is not going to try to catch up and improve. They got the target on their back now. It's a lot different playing with the target on your back. So South Carolina State got to hit the recruiting trail hard. There were some rumors that Buddy Pugh might step down, I heard on one of the Twitter spaces. I don't know anything about that. But if Buddy Pugh comes back, South Carolina State is going to be very hard to beat. Now, for Jackson State, just landed the number 1 recruit in the country. Recruit offensive linemen. Listen, if they've landed some good ones, you got to recruit more offensive linemen. I mean, Deion Sanders needs to bring in my opinion, like 8 new offensive linemen. Have a pure competition, and just we got to figure out who the best 5 offensive linemen are on this team. So offensive lineman is a big need. Wide receiver, in my opinion, is set. They got to recruit a running back. 5-star Zach Evans is still out there. That could be an option for them. But there's also some great running backs in the portal. I might do an episode on that, looking at potential running back options for Jackson State. And on top of that, man, they got to. I think linebackers still a big need for them because they're losing. They're going to be losing some of these linebackers coming up. I know they landed Please, but I still think they need to land 1 or 2 more linebackers to bring in some depth, along with even bringing in some more defensive linemen, because I believe now Houston is on his way to the NFL, and so is Antoine Owens, I believe. So they got to bring in a bit more depth at the defensive line position too. But ultimately, man, great weekend for SWAC and MEAC football. I'm interested to see what the TV numbers are as they're released later this week, but I'll probably do a show on that as well, man. But I'm expecting, I hope it hits 2.5 to 3 million was my prediction. I hope it gets there, man. It seemed like a fun atmosphere, and I can't wait to go next year when I move back to the South finally. So be there next year, man. But listen, if you traveled, hope y'all had a blast, man. Listen, be safe on the way home, traveling back from Atlanta, man. Definitely want y'all to be able to tune in the rest of the week. Listen, mailbag on Tuesday night. Later, we're going to recap the semifinals of the FCS playoffs as well. Make sure to tune into all that good stuff. Listen, we got some big interviews coming. Multiple SWAT guys are coming on the show. Make sure to stay tuned, hit the subscribe button, and also, man, make sure to hit the like button on your way out from the video, man. But until next time, guys, the Blue Bloods are out.